They didn't run fingerprints or a DNA test on anything in the cell? Nothing? Oh, he committed suicide, close it up, end of story, that's it. Really? That's how you investigate a crime? With the most high-profile pedophile in the world at that time that we knew of? Think about what that means. They staged the scene. Why did all this happen 7 hours prior to the FBI getting there? Let's just try to think about this for a second. Epstein is dead. The FBI gets contacted immediately. They don't bother to come over. Sounds like maybe something was up here. You think maybe they knew about it in advance? If you want to subscribe to what I say, that it wasn't suicide. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end, my friends. As always, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. Oh, my wife is handing me a glass of wine. I asked her for it. This is our blackberry wine. I like it very much. I like it cold, so she put some ice in there. Very good. Our fruit wines are great. You know that line in The Godfather? Every time I try to get out, they pull me back.
Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Well, that's what happens with the Epstein thing. Every time we think it calms down, something else happens. And it's going to continue to happen until or unless we get all the files, which you probably will never get. We don't have to get into all the reasons why, but if you want to, I think we know why. Powerful, important people involved in that. And, you know, is there a cover-up? I don't think it's subscribed to anybody. It is a cover-up, but let's not get into that right now. I want to read the title of this article. It's called "An FBI Failure in the Jeffrey Epstein Case Was Revealed That Raised This Very Dark Question." Now, let me set this up, people. Remember, he died in August of 2019 when he was in federal jail in New York. And obviously, very suspicious circumstances. I have maintained all along he didn't commit suicide. I will stick by that. I don't care what anybody says. He didn't commit suicide. Now, the FBI that investigated him at that time was during Trump's presidency. But they didn't like Trump. We already know that. We already seen it through the Mueller investigation. We saw it through the text messages from agents that were texting how they were going to undermine Trump. We saw it that the FBI revealed Hunter Biden laptop was authenticated, but they didn't push it. They didn't reveal it when all of those agents and Biden himself came out and said it was Russia, disinformation. They didn't like Trump. They did everything to try to undermine Trump during his presidency. We know that. Okay, so let's not get into anything like that. But this was the FBI that investigated Epstein. Now, I have maintained this. If Donald Trump had any exposure in this matter, they would have revealed it. No question about it. They would have revealed it because they hate Donald Trump, and they would have revealed it, unless they can't reveal anything because so many people are involved on the left also that they don't want to reveal it. It's a big cover-up. Okay, so those are the things that we have to understand going in. But let's read this article. It's very interesting, and I think it's pretty credible. Remember, it was written by CBS. They don't love Trump, so let's read it. The federal government had one job when Jeffrey Epstein died in his cell 6 years ago. They needed to conduct a competent investigation into the death of the world's most notorious sex trafficker, and that he was. But an FBI failure in the Jeffrey Epstein case was revealed that raised this very dark question. Was this incompetence or something far more sinister? I think just about everybody watching right now is going to say it was far more sinister, including myself. I would say that. CBS News exposes shocking investigative failures. CBS News just dropped a bombshell report that should have every American asking serious questions about what really happened in that Manhattan jail cell on August 10th, 2019. I think so. The investigative failures are so glaring, so fundamentally incompetent, that they read like a masterclass in how not to investigate a suspicious death. Start with this jaw-dropping fact. It took federal investigators, listen to this, nearly 2 years to interview the two corrections officers who were on duty the night Epstein died. Think about that for a second. The two people who had the most direct knowledge of what happened that night, and the feds couldn't be bothered to talk to them for 24 months? Does that make one bit of sense? These were the correction officers. They were on duty that night. The feds didn't talk to them, the FBI, for 2 years. Why do you think? Think somebody got to them? Think somebody said, hey, bury this? Think so? What do you think?
My friends, you may not have heard, but I now have a wine branded in my name. Franzese wine. I'm very proud of it. It comes from the world's first vineyards. We have alcoholic wine and non-alcoholic wine, several varieties, fruit varieties. You're going to love it. Different than anywhere you've ever tasted before. So enjoy this with your friends. Go to franzesewine.com. An offer you shouldn't refuse, but a taste you're going to love.
One of those officers was the only person who claims to have actually seen Epstein hanging from his bedsheet. You think that might be important enough to warrant a conversation before 2021? 2 years later, but apparently not. What excuse could they have for that? Can we not bring those agents forward and investigate and ask them, why didn't you talk to the corrections officer? The one that found the guy? 2 years later, you don't talk to him? Really? The FBI crime scene work that would embarrass even CSI students. Here's where it gets even more outrageous. The FBI, supposedly the premier law enforcement agency in the entire world, showed up to process Epstein's cell more than 7 hours after his body was discovered. Now, the FBI officers are right across the street practically from the jail. Why did it take them 7 hours after they were notified that Epstein had allegedly hung himself? 7 hours. Why? By the time they arrived, the scene looked like a tornado had hit it. Linens were thrown everywhere, mattresses shoved into corners. Epstein's personal belongings moved around like someone was playing musical chairs with the evidence. Someone was playing musical chairs with the evidence. It takes them 7 hours to get to the crime scene when they're right across the street. I know. And everything was moved around in the cell. When you have a crime scene, you're not supposed to touch anything. The yellow tape goes up immediately. You don't touch anything, nothing, until the investigators get there. That's not what happened here. Want to know how bad this got? Listen, Basic Evidence 101 was completely ignored. The FBI didn't use evidence markers. You know, those little numbered tags that every cop show on TV gets right? The ones that help investigators keep track of what they found and where they found it? They didn't use them. This is a crime scene, the most high-profile pedophile in the entire world that we knew of, right? Didn't use markers. According to Barrero, that's Evidence Photography 101, and they completely skipped it. Even more disturbing, there's no indication in any official report that the FBI crime scene investigators ran fingerprints or DNA tests on anything found in Epstein's cell. They didn't run fingerprints or a DNA test on anything in the cell? Nothing? Oh, he committed suicide. Close it up. End of story. That's it. Really? That's how you investigate a crime? With the most high-profile pedophile in the world at that time that we knew of? Think about what that means. The most high-profile prisoner in America dies under suspicious circumstances, and the FBI can't be bothered to dust for fingerprints or collect DNA evidence. Atrocious, people. This wasn't some random street crime. This was Jeffrey Epstein, a man who had dirt on powerful people across the globe. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. That's exactly why they didn't do it. The scene was compromised before investigators arrived. Former NYPD Detective Herman Weisberg reviewed the photo and immediately spotted the problems. Quote, in those photographs, it was obvious that things were moved around, Weisberg explained. Quote, it definitely appeared to me that the scene was, for lack of a better term, staged a bit. They staged the scene. Why did all this happen 7 hours prior to the FBI getting there? Let's just try to think about this for a second. Epstein is dead. The FBI gets contacted immediately. They don't bother to come over. Sounds like maybe something was up here. You think maybe they knew about it in advance? If you want to subscribe to what I say, that it wasn't suicide, think about it for a second. I'm going to leave that open. Epstein's medication, his sleep apnea mask, and even pieces of fabric tied into nooses appeared in different places over a 90-minute period while photographers were documenting the scene. How did these things appear all over the place? Why? That's not how evidence preservation works. Once you discover a body, you lock down the scene until investigators can process it properly. That is investigative 101. We know that from watching television. I know that from having experienced it. But you watch television, what do? Immediately, okay, they secure the crime scene immediately so that they can investigate everything. None of that was done here. No yellow tape, no leaving everything the way it was. FBI comes 7 hours later. Suspicious? Instead, Epstein's cell became a free-for-all where critical evidence was moved, rearranged, and potentially contaminated. Key witnesses were never interviewed. The investigative failures didn't stop with the crime scene. Federal investigators questioned 54 people before issuing their final report, but somehow managed to miss talking to key witnesses who had firsthand knowledge of what happened. They never interviewed many of the inmates housed on Epstein's tier the night he died. They skipped at least one staffer who arrived at his cell shortly after the body was found. They ignored nearly all of the visitors Epstein saw in the days leading up to his death. This is unconscionable. How did they not interview these people? High-profile figure, in federal custody, allegedly commits suicide. The crime scene is a disaster. Everything moved around. The FBI don't get there for 7 hours when they're right across the street. And then they failed to investigate key witnesses. Attorney David Schoen visited Epstein just 9 days before his death and said the financier was actively planning to fight the criminal charges against him. Attorney David Schoen, he was Epstein's attorney, visited him 9 days in advance and said Epstein was ready to fight. Why wouldn't he be? He knew he was being protected. He got a sweetheart deal first time around. He knew he had dirt on high-profile people. He'd be protected. He was going to fight the case and was probably taking time to get to the people. Tell them, hey, you better help me out here. You can bet on that. I don't think he committed suicide because he was very engaged in the idea of fighting the case, Schoen told CBS News. He hired me, and to kill himself 9 days later wouldn't have made a lot of sense. I'm sure it wasn't cheap when he hired him. Did investigators bother to interview Schoen or the rotating cast of young lawyers who spent hours with Epstein in his final days? Why was he visiting with all these lawyers? They weren't telling him, you're dead, Epstein, you got no case, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. Lawyers don't do that. They were encouraging him, telling him, okay, I don't have to be there to know that. This is our defense. They were working on putting a defense together. Why would he be doing all of that in the days before he committed suicide? Doesn't make sense. Sorry. The surveillance video that wasn't. Here's another detail that should make your head spin. The surveillance camera in Epstein's cell block was streaming but not recording due to a hard drive malfunction. This wasn't a surprise failure. Prison officials knew about the problem, but they hadn't bothered to fix it. Why wouldn't they fix it with Jeffrey Epstein, who was on suicide watch for a while, remember? Allegedly. They just put him on there just in case. They watch him. You know, the early days when you come into prison, high-profile guy, they may do that, put you on suicide watch. Now they put him in the cell. They have surveillance cameras on him, the most high-profile prison in the jail, and the cameras aren't working. So the most important prisoner in the federal system dies in a cell with a broken surveillance system, and nobody thought that might be worth addressing beforehand. What this really tells us, look, this investigation was such a disaster that it would be laughable if the stakes weren't so high. Whether Epstein killed himself or was murdered, the American people deserved a competent investigation that followed basic forensic procedures. Instead, we got a sloppy mess that raises more questions than it answers. Former Attorney General William Barr told Congress he wanted to, quote, rule out anything other than suicide and directed investigators to, quote, flood the zone. Well, how did they flood the zone if they didn't get there for 7 hours after he was allegedly committed suicide? That's flooding the zone? Flooding the zone is not talking to the 2 correction officers that were on duty that night for 2 years? Flooding the zone was not talking to some of the inmates that were in the cells surrounding him that night? Maybe they saw something, like the missing minute and a half that was, missing on the camera. They don't talk to the woman staffer that came in, was one of the first people to look at the crime scene. That's flooding the zone, William Barr? Really? Who are you kidding? But flooding the zone apparently meant showing up 7 hours late, not collecting DNA evidence, failing to interview key witnesses, and treating the scene like a yard sale instead of a crime scene. Very well put. The federal government had every resource at their disposal to get this right. They had the best forensic experts, unlimited funding, and the full attention of the nation's top law enforcement officials. And they still managed to botch it so badly that even basic police procedures were totally ignored. 6 years later, we're left with more questions than answers about what really happened to Jeffrey Epstein, and a federal investigation that wouldn't pass muster in a small-town police department. The American people deserve better. Epstein's victims deserve better. And anyone who cares about justice and accountability should be demanding answers about how our supposedly elite law enforcement agencies could fail this spectacularly. You know what, people? I know, I want to tell you this, and again, there's no way that I would look to cover this up for anybody. Nobody. And you know, people on the left now that are demanding this investigation, why did you not demand it during the Biden years? Why? Why all of a sudden now are you talking about demanding this and a cover-up during Trump's investigation? It's very simple why. This is just another way to throw a bullet at Donald Trump. That's it. Because if you really cared about all of this, and you knew about this, if you really cared about it, you'd have been talking about it since 2019. You'd have been talking about it during the Biden administration. You'd have been talking about it all along. So I want to dismiss any of the nonsense out there claiming that it's Donald Trump's cover-up. No, it's not. It is a cover-up, in my opinion, because I do believe two things. Number one, Jeffrey Epstein did not commit suicide. And look, the Justice Department that is in authority right now only has the investigative information that was turned over to them. They haven't reinvestigated this case. It was turned over to them by the prior administration and the prior FBI, who we know is corrupt. We know they were corrupt. There's no question about it. Comey, all the agents that went after Donald Trump, they were corrupt. We're seeing it all now. We're seeing how the FBI was spying on conservative senators, GOP senators. They were corrupt. No doubt about it. Something was in place. It's very suspicious that the FBI didn't move immediately to their star prisoner. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. They would have ran over there. They should have run over there. Something was in place long before this, people, with Jeffrey Epstein, going way back. And I mean way back. Look, there's no question in my mind that he had information on powerful people. No question. The videos that they have, there's people involved. And look, we have to understand something. There is power in place here. And Jeffrey Epstein, in my view, was working for somebody. You know, whether it was the Mossad, I don't know that for a fact. I know what we're hearing, and I know that, you know, people are investigating that. There's no question that he had information on powerful people. I think that's pretty obvious. I think if we were able to see some of those videos, remember the hidden cameras that he had and all the bedrooms in his fantasy island there, whatever they want to call it, there's no question that there were powerful people involved, you know, around the world. And when you have that kind of information, you carry weight. There's no question. So I do believe it's being covered up. I do believe that Jeffrey Epstein did not commit suicide. I think they had to get rid of this guy. Look, same thing in the mob. You know, you go to a certain point, Roy DeMeo, why do you think Roy DeMeo got killed? Hey, we had enough of this guy. You know, we're not going to let him hurt anybody else. Who knows? He's a loose cannon. Get rid of him. Jeffrey Epstein, time to go. He had too much. He's facing time. It's out there a little bit now. Is he going to crack? What's he going to do? First thing he's going to try to do, but the American public are going to scream because it's pedophilia. It's something horrible. So, you know, we don't want him to reveal it. We got to get rid of him. I believe that. Why not? This is the real world. This is what happens. And to have a botched investigation like this, the FBI should be ashamed of themselves in that agency at that time. Comey, William Barr, ashamed of yourself. Barr, why didn't you get on this immediately? Why? You're number one prisoner. Number one prisoner. You weren't notified that this happened? You didn't get everybody over there to do the right thing immediately? And then you say, we're flooding the zone? How did you flood the zone? How? Explain that. Why aren't you put under oath to explain that? Explain all of this. Why did they show up 7 hours later? Why no DNA testing? Why no fingerprints? Why no yellow tape? Why was everything thrown around in the room? Why didn't you talk to, people that night that were there? Why didn't you talk to the 2 correction officers that were on duty that night? Why don't you find out why the camera wasn't fixed? Do we have answers there? I didn't see those reports. I mean, this is absolutely a cover-up. And I'm telling you now, the investigative report that the FBI is holding now, that's what they have. It was handed to them. And again, why didn't this come out during the Biden administration? If everybody on the left, and I have to say this, because it's hypocrisy to the highest level. They just want to try to nail Trump with this now. Why didn't you nail Biden? Why not? Why didn't you scream about this during the Biden administration? Why not? Because you don't care about the victims. You don't care about anything. And you figure, let me try to throw enough dirt so that people do believe that Trump had something to do with this cover-up. And you know why it makes no sense? Because if they had any dirt at all on Trump, after impeaching him twice, having the whole Russiagate nonsense garbage thrown against him, after indicting him 4 or 5 times, after trying to bankrupt him, after coming after him civilly, after calling him Hitler and a fascist and a destroyer of democracy and everything else they threw at this man, do you think for 1 minute, that they wouldn't have used anything against him if they would have found out something that he was complicit in with Epstein? Are you kidding me? They created false dossiers. They fabricated evidence. They made things up. They had a Secret Service detail on him when he was speaking, almost got the guy killed. They would have done anything, any little drop of anything. If they would have had something against Trump, they would have thrown it out against him. And the Biden administration had 4 years to investigate it. And the FBI, prior to the Biden administration, who hated Donald Trump, would have got it and would have given it to Hillary or to Biden or to any, and they would have revealed it. No doubt about it. And if you don't admit that to yourself after everything that went down with Trump, you're just lying to yourself. That's it. You just don't want to admit the truth. You got TDS or whatever. But this is a shame. This is a shame to see how they botched this entire investigation. And you know what? I don't think it was botched. I believe it was intentional. I really do. I think the word was out. This guy wasn't going to last. It was intentional. Something had to be done with Epstein. And the cleanest way to do it was to get rid of him. That's mob style, people. And don't think your government won't stoop to that. They will. Mafia democracy. Read my book. Don't put anything past them. I want to thank all of you that have subscribed and have been watching my daughter's podcast. They're doing very well, picking up pretty good. I'm looking at some of the comments. People are enjoying it. They're talking about our family life and other things. But they're 2 bright young ladies. They don't hold anything back. They've thrown me under the bus just a little bit. But people are really enjoying it. So thank you for subscribing and thank you for telling your friends and family about it. I appreciate it. And I think it's at Franzese Girls Production, something like that. But go and watch them. I know you're going to enjoy it. I leave it up to you. I want to hear your comments. Let me know what you have to say, my friends. How do I always leave you? Same way. Never going to change. Be safe. Every single day, every day, we're reading about something, a shooting. I mean, the world is going crazy. You people want to stop with this harmful, hateful rhetoric. Stop. It gets into the brains of people that are unbalanced, and look what they do. Absolutely, you got to stop. Be safe, people. Ladies, watch yourself in the parking lots, in the stores. Keep hold of your kids. They use the kids, too. You don't know a strange kid. Stay away from them. I hate to say it, but make sure if he's leading you anywhere, you know where you're going, because they'll use that kid to lure you to a van or a car and throw you in there. You're gone. destroy your phone, everything, you're gone. Be careful, ladies. Be alert. Be healthy. Why not? My father-in-law, unfortunately, has been ill the last couple of weeks. We're praying for him, and thank you for all the prayers. There were times he didn't take care of himself the best way. When you get older, the way you physically, treat your body, it's going to help you later on in life. Trust me. Trust me on that. My dad lived to 103. He took care of himself, even through 40 years in prison. Be safe, be healthy. God bless each and every one of you, your family, your communities, your neighborhood, your loved ones. God bless America. And people, yes, I'll see you next time. Stay tuned.
My friends, I have a question for you. How would you like to get more of me? When I say more of me, I mean intimate phone calls, Zoom calls, Q&As, questions. You can ask me anything that you want. Behind the scenes information. I can't tell everything on YouTube. This is an elite group. We have over 1,000 people that are involved, not only with me, but helping one another. It's a great platform that we've created. So become part of the family. Yes, it's an offer that you shouldn't refuse. michaelfranzese.com/family. Be part of the legacy today.